كلية الفقه الحنفي تقدم.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. So in today's sessions, inshallah, we'll be moving further on in the shares table, where we were discussing the shares of the Quranic shareholders, the ones that the shares are mentioned for in the Quran. So we've discussed some of them already. Now we will move on to the daughter's share. So the daughter will have three scenarios. So we will discuss the three scenarios of the daughter. Then we will discuss the paternal granddaughter. So in relation to the daughter, the paternal granddaughter, when the daughter is not alive, paternal granddaughter will obviously take her place. So we will discuss in regards to the paternal granddaughter's shares, and she has a total of 5 scenarios that we will discuss. Then we will discuss the full sister's shares. So the full sister of the deceased has 5 scenarios, and we will discuss them in detail, explaining them inshallah. And then we will move on to the agnate sister who has 6 scenarios. This one's a little bit more challenging for some people, but if we understand everything that I've taught before this, then this will just be a build-up to the previous scenarios. So inshallah, it shouldn't be too difficult for people. But there are 6 scenarios of the agnate sister. The agnate sister is the one who is related to the deceased through father, only father. So the mothers of the two are different, but the father of the two is the same. So this is the agnate sister. So ukht li ab in essence. So this is 6 scenarios which we will go through. And then we have the mother's share. So mother of the deceased has 3 scenarios. So we'll go through that inshallah. And lastly, the grandmothers. So whether it's the maternal or paternal grandmothers, both of them will be discussed inshallah. There's only 2 scenarios for them. So that will all be detailed. And lastly, inshallah, I will mention all these shares in a nutshell in one slide, one graphic. We'll try to present all of the shares in one go. So for those people who want to look at it and view it and compare the different shareholders and their shares, the shares can be compared as well. Inshallah, we'll show it in a comparison format where some shareholders can be compared with the others, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. So now we move on to the next part of the shares table, where we are now on the daughter's share. So if I share this screen, if you see here. So you can see the daughter, she has 3 scenarios. She has scenario number 1, where she receives half of the estate, and this is when the deceased has only 1 living daughter but no son, meaning her brother is not alive. So there's no son of the deceased. There's no son of the deceased. She is in essence the only child. So she receives half of the estate of the deceased. Scenario number 2 is where she receives 2/3, and that's when there are 2 or more daughters. So 2 or more daughters alive, but there is no son of the deceased. And the 3rd scenario is where she receives half of her brother's share, in essence the half of the deceased son's share. So that's when obviously the son or more than one son is alive of the deceased. Then the daughter or the daughters, however many there are, will receive each half of the son's share. So if there is, for instance, there is 1 daughter and 1 son, then the son will receive 2 parts of the inheritance, and the daughter will receive one part of the inheritance. So in essence, the brother will receive the brother of that daughter, which is the son of the deceased, will receive 2/3 of the entire estate. If there's only two of them, 2/3 of the entire estate, and the daughter will receive 1/3 of the entire estate, like this. Or if there's 2 daughters and 2 sons, then each son will receive double the share, so 2 parts each, in comparison to their counterparts, in comparison to the deceased's daughters, who will receive 1 part each. So the entire property will be split into 6 parts, and 2/6 will each brother will receive, and 1/6 each daughter will receive. So like this. Inshallah, when we do the examples, this will become a little more clearer. But this is the 3 scenarios that the daughter has. Next, we move on to the paternal granddaughter. So the granddaughter, when we say granddaughter, we're talking about the son's daughters. That's what you mean, not the daughter's daughters. So the paternal granddaughter has 5 scenarios. This is 3 scenarios are similar to the daughter anyway, because she's practically replacing the daughter when the daughter's not there. So you'll see number 1, 2, and 4 are the similar ones that we prayed already, or we understood already. So you've got the first scenario is where she receives half of the entire estate. This is when the deceased has only 1 living granddaughter, but no daughter or male descendant. So no daughters alive, and also no male descendants alive. Male descendants because we're talking about no son of the deceased, as well as no grandson of the deceased. Scenario number 2, 2/3 when there's 2 or more of them, 2 or more of the granddaughters. Again, there's no daughter, no male descendants. Scenario number 3 slightly changes, where we have 1/6 she's receiving. So this is when the deceased only has 1 living daughter. So it can only be 1 daughter. And again, there can be no male descendants alive. So if there's 1 daughter, if you remember, 1 daughter will receive a half. The maximum that these daughters are receiving is 2/3, right? So this granddaughter is considered to be taking that rest of after the half of the daughter. So after those who understand maths, if the daughter has already taken half, 2/3 is the max that they could have received. That means 1/6 is remaining from the 2/3 after giving the daughter her half. So that's why she's receiving this 1/6 share, what's remaining from the daughter's allocation, basically. So that's why this 1/6 scenario comes up. Then number 4, the 4th scenario is where she receives half of the grandson's share. This is the same as previously. So the deceased has no son, and but has a grandson. Okay, now this is regardless of if any daughters are alive. Okay, the daughters can be alive, no problem. But as soon as the grandson is there, the granddaughter will receive half of her counterpart, basically the grandson's share. Then the 5th scenario is that she receives nothing, and this is when the deceased has, number 1, first scenario is when the deceased has a son alive. So as soon as the son is alive, the granddaughter gets nothing, regardless of anybody else is there. So that's the first scenario. And number 2 is where there are 2 or more living daughters and no male descendants. So if there's 2 or more living daughters, then they already got their 2/3 share. There's nothing left to give to the granddaughter, right? And there's no male descendants as well to enable her to inherit. So this is the shares of the granddaughter. Next, we move on to the shares of the full sister. So the full sister has 5 scenarios. This is now similar to the sister scenarios, sort of the daughter scenario. So it should be quite simple. There's only one difference you can see. So first scenario, she receives half when the deceased has only 1 full sister alive. So there's only 1 of them. And this is the important part, but has no full brother, meaning her counterpart's not there. Full brother is not there. Male ascendant going upwards, father, grandfather, male ascendants not there, or male or female descendants are not there. So you can see siblings of deceased get nothing if there is a ascendant, male ascendant, or if there's any descendant, male or female descendant. So this is something to bear in mind, and if you understand that concept, then the rest of it does become easier. Then the second scenario, 2/3 if there's two or more of the full sisters alive, but there is no full brother, there's no male ascendant, and there's no male or female descendant. Number 3 is what remains after giving the female descendant. Now this comes from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, اجعلوا الأخوات مع البنات أصبة. So make the sisters, this shares, agnetic shareholders with the daughters. So what remains after giving the female descendant, if there's anything remaining? So deceased has a living female descendant, whether it's the daughter or the granddaughter and so on, alive, but no full brother, no male ascendant, no male descendant alive. So that's what she will receive. The full sister will receive the rest of the pot. Number 4, fourth scenario is where she receives half of her brother's share, meaning half of the deceased's brother's share as well. So the deceased has a full brother or multiple full brothers alive, but no male ascendant again or male descendant alive. So, and again, this one is regardless of if the daughter of the deceased is alive. So, and number 5 is she receives nothing. And this is when the deceased has a living male ascendant. So there is a living male ascendant, or there is a living male descendant. Then the full sister receives nothing in this scenario. So this is the shares of the full sister. I appreciate that this will get a little bit more, some people may think that this is too much, right? But the point of this, very important to understand, is that all we want, because we just talked about, before this, we talked about the Quranic ayah, the Quranic verse, and where we took out these shares from. Generally, some are obviously explained in the hadith. So these are important to first memorize. Memorize them. Getting your head around them will happen when we do examples. When we do examples, then when we refer to each one, because we'll do examples for each one of them. And when we do, then everything will become very clear, crystal clear. But if there's nothing learnt, you don't even know what we're talking about when we do the examples, which scenario we're referring to, then it becomes a little more trickier for people. So this is why I always say this is vital. Just learn it. Once you learnt it once, it's very easy. Just have to keep memorizing, remembering it. And then, inshallah, when we come ahead in terms of doing the actual examples for each one of them, then it becomes easier to apply because you already know it, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Now the next person in regards to the shares table is we have the agnate sister here. So the agnate sister has 6 scenarios. If we've understood the full sister scenario properly, then this one, inshallah, should be too difficult. There are a lot more things to remember, but inshallah, hopefully it shouldn't be too difficult to understand. In terms of concept, it's quite easy. So first scenario is where she receives half of the estate. So this is where the deceased has one agnate sister alive, no full sibling. So when we're saying no full sibling, that means there's no full brother or sister of the deceased alive. And there's no agnate brother, meaning this agnate sister's counterpart. There's no agnate brother of the deceased. There's no male ascendant and no male or female descendant. And I already explained that if as soon as there's a male ascendant or a male or any descendant, whether it's male or female descendant, then these sisters don't really get anything, whether it's agnate or full sisters. So that concept was already explained anyway. Number 2, where there is 2/3, when they receive 2/3, it's fairly obvious, following the same pattern as before. that the deceased has two or more agnate sisters, and again the same as before, there's no full siblings, there's no agnate brother, there's no male ascendant, nor any male or female descendant alive. And then scenario number 3 is 1/6. So this is similar to where the granddaughter receives this 1/6 share remaining from the daughter. So here you have 1/6 share where the agnate sister, she receives 1/6. This is when the deceased has only one full sister alive. So remembering the sister's share, the pot that goes to the sisters, is maximum 2/3. So after giving this one full sister who's alive, after giving her the half, from the 2/3 there is a sixth remaining once you give the half. So that sixth is going to this agnate sister here. So this is one full sister alive, but there's no full brother, no agnate brother, no male ascendant or male or female descendant alive. Number 4 is where she receives the remaining after giving to the female descendant. So just as the full sister, she was made اجعلوا الأخوات مع البنات أصبة. We talked about that. So just as the full sister received the remaining after giving the full female descendant, if that full sister is not alive, then this agnate sister is taking her place in essence. So that's why the deceased, when the deceased has a female descendant alive, whether it's the daughter or the granddaughters alive, but no full sibling, no agnate brother, male ascendant or male descendant alive. So that's this scenario. Number 5 is half of the brother's share. So a half of this agnate sister's brother's share. So obviously in relation to the deceased, this brother will be an agnate brother. So this is deceased has agnate brother or brothers alive, however many there are, no problem, they are alive, but there's no full brother, no male ascendant, no male descendant alive. That's that one scenario. Or full sister who has become an agnetic shareholder already. So meaning the full sister, if she received that scenario number 4 there, which is the remaining after giving to the female descendants. So the full sister, if we bring up the full sister's share now, just to show you, we did this already. So the full sister over here, in scenario number 3, as you can see, so your full sister in scenario number 3, she is receiving what remains after the female descendant. So this, if that scenario is taking place, then even if there is an agnate brother alive, this agnate sister will not receive anything. So that's why it's saying full sister who has become a agnetic shareholder, that cannot be there as well. So if there's a full sister who has already become an agnetic shareholder with the daughter or granddaughter, because that agnetic shareholder is already going to the full sister, then this scenario number 5 will not apply. She will not receive here, the agnate sister will not receive half of the brother's share. What will happen is the 6th scenario you'll see. So the 6th scenario is that she receives nothing. That's when there is a male ascendant alive, or there is a male descendant alive, or there is a full brother alive. These ones are quite easy. If any of these are there, then straight away the agnate sister receives nothing. Likewise, scenario number 4, when there's 2 full sisters but no agnate brother. So when there's 2 full sisters, remember, they are already receiving their 2/3, right? So that's the maximum allocation for sisters. So because their full sisters have already taken the 2/3, because there's 2 or more sisters, then the agnate sister over here will not receive anything. So that's number 4. And scenario number 5 is the one that we were mentioning earlier. So which is that one full sister has become an agnetic shareholder with a female descendant. So if that one sister has already become a agnetic shareholder, then this agnate sister will receive nothing, even if her counterpart brother is alive. Meaning if the deceased's agnate brother is alive, still doesn't matter. So this is the scenarios for the agnate sister. Next we move on to the scenarios for the mother. So the mother, the first scenario, she's only got 3 scenarios, very easy now, going back to all easy scenarios. So first is she receives a third of the whole. You'll see why we're talking about a third of whole in contrast to scenario number 3. So the third, in essence, she'll receive a third of the estate. This is when the deceased has no male or female descendant, there's no children of the deceased alive, nor 2 or more siblings of any type, whether it's the full siblings, whether it's brother or sister, doesn't matter, full siblings alive of the deceased, whether it's agnate siblings of the deceased, or whether it's the uterine siblings of the deceased. 2 or more of any type will not allow this scenario to take place. So what will happen is scenario number 2, you'll see 1/6 that she will receive. This is when the deceased has male or female descendant alive. So there's either son or daughter of the deceased alive, or there is 2 or more living siblings of any type alive. So if there's for example, there is a uterine and a agnate sister, 1 each, or there's a brother and a sister like this, then any 2 will make this scenario happen now, where the mother will receive 1/6 of the estate. Scenario number 3, last one, is a very specific scenario, only applies in this one scenario, where she receives 1/3 of the remaining after deducting the share of the spouse. So this means that the deceased only has a spouse and both parents alive. So spouse can be spouses as well, depending on who the deceased is. So if it's a man that's passed away, then he could have left behind 2 or up to 4, wives. But that's regardless. The point is that the type of shareholder is only a spouse. Obviously, if the female passed away, then she would have had 1 husband who's alive. So, and there's only the parents here. There's only the both parents of the deceased alive. So the mother and the father of the deceased alive. If that is the case, if there is zawj ma'al abuwain, we call it, and zawja ma'al abuwain, for those who understand the Arabic, meaning spouse plus parents, simple as that, then this scenario will apply. As soon as there is another shareholder, this scenario no longer applies. So this scenario only applies when only these shareholders are there, where the mother receives 1/3 after deducting the share of the spouse. So you deduct the share of the spouse, you give them what they give, where you give them what's remaining. Now you do 1/3 of that goes to the mother, 2/3 obviously of that remaining would go to the father of the deceased. So this is the scenarios of the mother. We have one scenario left, which is the maternal and paternal grandmother, which we'll do in the next video. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So now we move on to the maternal grandmother and the paternal grandmother, their share. So there's only 2 scenarios, fairly easy. We have a 1/6 that they will receive. This is when the deceased leaves behind grandmother or grandmothers. They will share that 1/6 of the same generation, but no mother or father. That will be explained further in the next scenario. So the next scenario, number 2, is she receives nothing. This is the first scenario here we have, is when the deceased leaves behind a mother. So when there is a mother of the deceased alive, then the grandmothers will not receive anything. Scenario number 2 is where the deceased has a father alive, but no mother alive. Now in this case, the paternal grandmother will not receive anything, but the maternal grandmother will still receive her 1/6 share. So the 1/6 share in this scenario will fully go to the maternal grandmother. So what you can understand from this is the maternal grandmother is a little bit more, stronger, more powerful in this particular, in this regards of receiving a share, because the idea is that the grandmothers are replacing the mother. That's why they're getting that 1/6 share when the mother's not alive. So, but because this share goes to the mother's side of the family are going to be obviously stronger in receiving that. So that's why the maternal grandmother will receive it still, but the paternal grandmother will not, because her son, in essence, the deceased's father, would have blocked her from receiving and would have deprived her from receiving anything here. So in essence, the father of the deceased can only block his mother, can't block his mother-in-law, in essence, if we understand it in this way as well. And scenario number 3, lastly, we have the deceased has a grandmother or of a closer generation alive. So she will block the more distant grandmother. So this scenario is a closer relative will block the further relative. That's a fairly obvious thing. So this is where the grandmothers will, for example, block or will block the great grandmother from receiving anything, for instance. So this is 3 scenarios in which the grandmothers do not receive anything. Otherwise, we understood that she will receive a 6th. So that was the scenarios table or the shares table for those who receive a fixed Quranic share. So there are other shareholders of or other people who receive a share of the estate, but not the fixed Quranic shares. So that's the reason we only discuss these particular ones. We'll do examples of this later, and we'll also talk about the other heirs who also receive later, inshallah. Now, just to summarize this all in a 1 page, every single share that we've done, I'm trying to summarize this in relation to the deceased here. So if we have the deceased, will either be a man or a woman, and they'll either they may be married as well. So if, for example, the deceased passed away leaving behind a wife, she will either receive a quarter or a 1/8. So the quarter is when there is no children, the 1/8 is when there are children. If the deceased leaves behind a husband because the wife passed away, then there is the husband will either receive a half or a quarter. So half is where there is no children, and quarter was when there was children. So this should inshallah jog memory. Then move on to the father and grandfather relationship. So we saw that the in terms of deceased, there's a father or there's a grandfather. Then what happens? So we talk about the father first. The father gets 1/6 when there is male furu', meaning descendants. And 1/6 plus ayn means the asaba, means the agnetic shareholder. He'll receive the remainder of the pot. This is when there is female descendants, furu', meaning descendants alive. And ayn is the asaba, where they receive the remaining, they receive the entire pot. This is when there is no furu', meaning no descendants alive at all. So that's the father's share. Grandfathers compare, as you can see. The grandfather gets 1/6 when there is male furu', 1/6 plus asaba when there's female furu', asaba meaning remainder of the pot when there is no furu'. The same as the father, you see. Only one scenario extra is where the father is mahjub, meaning gets nothing, when the father is alive of the deceased. So this is father-grandfather's relationship. Then we move on to another comparison, or we say another person, we talked about the other share of the uterine siblings. So 1/6 when there's only one of them, 1/3 when there's 2 or more, and meme again, mahjub, meaning they don't receive anything. This is meaning they're blocked from receiving anything. That's when there is male usul or furu', meaning male ascendants or descendants alive. So this is the uterine siblings. We're not comparing them with anybody. We're not joining them with anybody, but you could see that they're there. Then we have the grandmother and mother, which we just did. So let's talk about the mother first. The mother is 1/3 when there's no children, or two siblings. 1/6 when there is children or two siblings. 1/3 of the remaining when there's spouse with parents. The grandmother receives nothing, meaning we'll do that scenario first because it's easier. So mother cancels all fathers, all mother cancels all, and father cancels his side. Okay, or the closer one you can add there, closer cancels the further distant one. And then lastly, the sixth scenario is not any of the above. So if it's none of the above, then 1/6 will apply. Then we move to the granddaughter and daughter. So the daughter, we'll talk from daughter's angle first. Daughter of the deceased receives half if there's only one of them, 2/3 if there's two or more, and they will become asaba. The ba is there for a reason, but we'll talk about that later. So the ain means the asaba, ba means the binafsihi. So they will receive an asaba, meaning they will be a agnetic shareholder receiving this half of the son's share. Then the granddaughter in relation is similar. So you can see a half when there's only one of them, 2/3 when there's two or more, 1/6 now additional when there is one daughter alive. Then the asaba binafsihi, meaning receiving the remainder of half of her counterpart. So when there's a grandson alive, and they receive nothing when there is a son or two daughters and no grandson. And lastly, we have the comparison between full sister and agnate sister. So full sister receives half when there's only one, 2/3 when there's two or more. Now ain ma'a, that's the comparison between the ain ba. So this is asaba ma'al ghair. So she will be a agnetic shareholder but with female furu this time. So this is where the female furu is alive, meaning the daughter and granddaughter is alive, or daughters are alive. And then the asaba ba means asaba binafsihi, meaning when this full sister has the full brother alive, the deceased has a full brother alive in essence. So she'll receive half of the share of her full brother. And mahjub mim, meaning that she receives nothing when there is male usul or male furu alive, male ascendants or descendants alive. And then agnate sister receives half when there's only one of them, 2/3 when there's two or more, 1/6 when there's one full sister alive. And then the same as before, asaba ma'al ghair, meaning she receives agnetic shareholder with female furu, female descendant, and asaba binafsihi, meaning she receives the remaining share, agnetic shareholder, when there is the full brother. That shouldn't be full brother there, that should be agnate brother there, yes? So that's a mistake there. So when there's the agnate brother alive, and the mim mahjub, meaning not receiving anything, when there's male usul, male furu, full brother, or two sisters, or a sister who's already become a asaba. So all of that applies to her. So these are all the scenarios in a nutshell, all of the scenarios put together, just there's that one correction there, which we talked about. And if you memorize this properly, you can memorize it in short form in this way as well. You don't have to memorize every single thing, but just making sure all the shares are memorized. Then inshallah, later on when we come to some sort of understanding and I explain each scenario in detail, then things will become clearer inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So alhamdulillah, now we have finished the shares table, the shares of the fixed Quranic shareholders, the Dhawil Furud we call them. So those who receive a fixed Quranic share, the discussion that we've had so far in regards to all of their shares, alhamdulillah, we finished that table. So we went through the daughter's three scenarios, whether she receives a half, a 2/3, or لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ, half of the son's share. So we went through that. Then the 5 scenarios of the granddaughter, where there was either half when there's only one of them, when there's 2/3 when there's two or more of them, 1/6 when there is the one daughter alive, and half of the grandson's share when there is the grandson alive, in essence, her brother alive, meaning the paternal granddaughter's brother, who's in relation to the deceased, a grandson alive, and nothing where she receives if there is a living son, or there are two or more living daughters but no male descendant, meaning no grandson alive. So those were the 5 scenarios we talked about there. Then we have full sisters, 5 scenarios: a half when there's one of them, 2/3 when there's 2 or more. She receives the remaining pot after giving the female descendants. That's if they are the female descendant alive and there's nobody else. There's half of the brother's share. That's if there is a brother alive of the deceased, the full brother, and nothing when there is male ascendant or male descendant alive. Then the agnate sisters, 6 scenarios: half when there's one of them, 2/3 when there's 2 or more, 1/6 when there is one full sister alive. Remaining after giving the female descendant, she receives that share too. Half of the brother's share if her brother, the agnate brother, is alive, and nothing when there is either the male ascendant, male descendant, full brother, 2 or more full sisters, but no agnate brother, or lastly, one full sister who has become an agnatic shareholder, even, meaning it could be multiple sisters, even one full sister who's already become agnatic shareholder with a female descendant. They will be the scenarios where agnate sister will receive nothing. Then the 3 scenarios of the mother: 1/3 when deceased has no descendants, and and also no 2 or more siblings alive of any type. If they are, then mother will receive 1/6. And if there's this one specific scenario where there is the spouse plus parents, then the mother will receive 1/3 of the remaining after giving the spouse the share, 1/3 of the remaining, because the other 2/3 will go to the father of the deceased. Then lastly, we went through the grandmothers. So grandmothers receive 1/6 as long as there is no mother alive. There is no if there is the father alive, then he will block his mother, the paternal grandmother, in essence, from receiving, and any closer grandmother of generation will block the further one of a further generation. So those were the shares that we did. Alhamdulillah, we finished.